Sultan is one of the most influential figures in the country, and when they speak, it becomes a talking point because they have a level of influence that allows them to speak truth to power, and they get listened to. But he's also saying that, yes, while it is correct that the Sultan has said the country is sitting on a keg of gunpowder, that it has even gone a bit further. It has become worsened over time because there's already an explosion. However, he says he wishes that the explosion doesn't continue beyond what we're experiencing right now.
And we really pray that it doesn't continue beyond what we experience
right.
now. And they were also hoping that the outcome of the meeting that would be held
today between the president and the state governors
and service chairs is drastic measures are taken to ensure that there's a turn down in the current hike in food prices and inflation in the country. Very salient points made by Dr. Babayo. No doubt every sector, every part, every Nigerian is currently experiencing the hardship, not just people who are on the streets or people who earn basic salaries, basically everybody, because what you earn can no longer afford you
even the basics.
Even the basics like food. Right. You'll be surprised to find out that you spend most of your salary on food, and it's still never enough. So, true, the Sultan has said that they can no longer pacify Nigerians over hunger, as regards hunger and the increasing prices of food items. Something actually needs to be done about it.
I can't agree any less. Let's take a quick break, everyone. We're back shortly to continue this conversation. Just stay with us. We believe we've been able to reconnect with Dr. Babayo Sule. If you can hear us, Doc, just continue with the valid point you were making a while ago.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. I was saying that the situation that led to the current socio-economic crisis in the country is not as daunting as the contemporary situation that Nigerians are facing in terms of both food insecurity and other serious socio-economic problems that we are facing. Honestly, we need such leaders because it is the task and the responsibility upon the shoulders of religious leaders, traditional leaders, the media, the academics, and all other stakeholders responsible to draw the attention of the government to the dangers of the current situation and the impending crisis that is looming. This also has to do, although sometimes the government will always defend itself and say that they wish there will be alternative. Well, there is never a problem that has no alternative. We all know that this current particular crisis is dragged by the removal of subsidy by President Buhari's government, which was affirmed by Tinubu's government on his assumption of duty as the president. We all know that there is no country that is not subsidizing its citizens in one way or the other. It all depends. If they are not subsidizing oil, they are subsidizing food commodities. If they are not subsidizing food commodities, they are subsidizing education, health services, public transportation, and other things. There is no way a government will remove subsidy and then leave people and its workers entirely on the mercy of nature. This has never been done in any economic policy all over. And that is exactly the mistake made by this government, which resulted in the current hardship and the crisis. So what I'm saying is the Sultan was right, and he has made his voice louder, and he has delivered his responsibility. What is left is for the government to stand up and listen, because we cannot afford further crisis or further security threat on top of the already current security threat that we are facing in the country. We are already been affected by double-barreled security crisis at all fronts in the country, from political violence to the issue of banditry, insurgency, separatist agitations, resource control agitations, and all this. So we cannot afford to add more crises on top of the already existing ones that we are battling to suppress. So therefore, the government should listen to Sultan carefully, and they should heed to his advice, and they should find immediate ways to ameliorate the current situation in order to avoid the impending crisis that will look inevitable unless something urgently is done.
My colleague is going to push a question to you shortly, but I wanted to ask you something else. You mentioned the removal of fuel subsidy, which many persons will tell you, well, fuel subsidy had been removed even before President Bola Tinubu came into office, because the previous government of former President Muhammadu Buhari had only covered subsidy payments till end of June. What are your concerns? I mean, you are a Nigerian, you are an academic, you have a handle on, socio-economic issues as well. What have been your thoughts with regards to the announcement of removal of fuel subsidy? Because the argument by many Nigerians is that while it wasn't a bad idea to have suspended payment of fuel subsidy, but the federal government got off on the wrong foot by not ensuring that the appropriate measures had been put in place prior to that action.
Well, thank you very much. I also said so. It was not President Tinubu that removed subsidy, but my annoyance with him is, instead of him to detach himself and instead inform Nigerians, or rather enlighten them that it was removed by President Buhari's government, all that I do is just to affirm it. But he went on and continued to announce, to even pronounce, even in the UN Assembly, anywhere, that I removed subsidy. And he was not the one who removed, so I don't know his benefit of owning the removal, as if it is a reward for the Nigerian citizens of voting you into office. Well, the reason why is I, as a political economist, is not in line with the argument of those who saw fuel subsidy removal as a viable alternative is simply because there are no alternative to some issues or some programs in the situation that Nigerians found themselves. You cannot, for example, you cannot at the same time plot two negative economic policies at a go without any compensating programs that will commensurate to this negative economic policy. While you remove subsidy, you plot NAIRA, all this translated into hardship and increased cost of living for the ordinary man. And at the same time, you have not provided any succor, any temporary intervention. Rather, it is just pronouncement. Even the 35,000 Naira wage award for the citizens, for the civil servants that belong to the federal government, her own possession workers are not being paid. Talk less of other palliatives. How do you expect a citizen with a static income has such intervention in terms of subsidies in currency and in fuel remove, making all price of foodstuff to skyrocket and multiply in order to ameliorate the suffering? This has never been done in any economic policy in the world. That is the mistake made by Buhari and Tinubu's government. In fact, the mistake was not even by Buhari and Tinubu's government. It was rather, to my own understanding, a mistake made by successive previous governments. For example, since 2010 or 2012 rather, when the crisis of fuel subsidy emanated during President Jonathan's time, since it becomes inevitable, it appeared inevitable that one day, sooner or later, this subsidy will be removed. What have the successive government done in the previous 14 years of not preparing to provide public transportation, to provide other alternative measures, so that once this removal takes place, people will now already have a palliative measures already introduced in preparation for the removal. Instead, our policymakers decided to sit down and fold their arms and continue to sabotage the economy whereby we fail to diversify the economy. We only rely on oil revenue in the oil sector that is fully laden with corrupt scandal allegations. Whenever the price of oil, or we are unable to supply our quota on the global oil market, we just fall back to borrowing. And when we borrow, they give us conditionality. And one of these conditionality is you must devalue your currency and withdraw all subsidies. So part of the policies that are taking place now are repercussions of excessive borrowing, as we must follow the conditionality. It is because of our own handiwork long time ago. So therefore, the government made an error by removing subsidy without providing adequate cushioning programs, therefore leaving people now to wallow in abject suffering, which at the end of the day will not augur well, because hunger has no religion, hunger has no ethnic group, hunger has no region. Even though the elite succeeded in polarizing Nigerians into religious, ethnic, and regional divisions, but once the scourge of hunger bite harder on Nigerians, they will not know when they will unconsciously unite and face the common enemy, which is bad governance. And that is what we are afraid, because we are always advocates of peaceful transition and peaceful social movement. There is no any revolution in the history of this world that ended well for any society that perpetrated it. So we are not moving or thinking toward that. That's why we are appealing to the policymakers to revisit these policies and to reconsider the current trend so that it will not escape out of hand.
Now, Dr. Babayo, thank you. No doubt, hunger has eaten deep into the lives of many Nigerians. Now, we see in the papers that the president, as well as governors and other service chiefs, will be meeting a closed-door meeting to discuss rising cost of food prices, food crisis and insecurity, and other challenges that we face in the country. There have also been several meetings like this. We've had meetings of northern leaders, you know, as regards insecurity, quite a few meetings. What makes this different, and what are your expectations, particularly from this meeting? Do you think that drastic measures will be taken to bring down the cost of food items?
Thank you very much. As Nigerians, we should always be optimistic. And you know, sometimes they say there is always light at the end of the tunnel. We cannot continue in this hardship. In fact, I am of the view that maybe our problems is suddenly coming to an end, although your problem will never come to an end forever. But maybe the most challenging problems are maybe seeing the end of themselves, because we have reached a point whereby now if we surpass this current line that we will definitely throw ourselves into crisis and confusion. So therefore, we need to reverse. So I think that what will make the current meeting this time around different is because this time around, the government is being told from all quarters, from all angles, that people are being paid off. People are pushed to the wall. And the push and pull factors will trigger to a kind of actions that we will all regret. So I think based on this, if the security officers will be sincere and honest, and they will tell the president the reality on ground, not what he wants to hear, but what exactly is happening, I think the president will be serious and will think of some measures that will really suppress the current condition and lower it down so that at least people will survive. There are many measures that can be taken. For example, let's say the government will earmark some amount of money, some substantial amount of money, import food, and then crash the price of the foodstuff in the market, especially the basic ones. I think this is one of the major interventions that maybe the government need to do immediately. And the other things is also definitely we need to look into the rainy season that is coming. We should avoid cosmetic policies that will just maybe around September or even October, state governors will plug up distribution of fertilizers to farmers when farmers have already harvested their own farm produce. Just the presidency and the security personnel should be honest to themselves and realize that if this current situation continues, there is no doubt that the country will explode. And we are not praying for that. Because if the country explodes, only God knows who will be the victims. Because maybe you and me that are able to press their clothes and appear somehow looking as if we are healthy, even though we are managing our own situation internally, maybe we'll be the first victims by the hopeless peasant roaming around us or surrounding us, because they will think that we are their problems and not even the politicians. So God forbid. So therefore they should, I think they will be serious because they know how serious the situation is. So we are hoping, we are optimistic that this time around the meeting should produce something good that will really touch into the situation and give us some relief measures.
I'm going to ask you this, Dr. Sule. I mean, a
Yeah.
bunch of problems in one right now. The organized labor is asking two things from the federal government. One, it says the government should seriously consider upward review of minimum wage to 1 million naira. And then it says the government needs to begin to work on upward review of wages on a year-to-year basis, which means every other year government needs to, if you like, increase salary of salaries of workers in the civil service and things like that. All right, but then government on its part is saying there's need for us to begin to regulate the prices of food and other essentials. Walk us through the possibility or otherwise of all of this.
Yeah, it's not only the labor that is now threatening to go on strike. Even the academic staff union of universities also too. I will come back to that. On the issue of labor, I think the NLC should be practical. We need to be realistic. This is one of the reasons perhaps why the government is not taking the labor serious. Why? Because whatever you do, you need to be considerate, you need to be reasonable, you need to be practical, because we are part and parcel of the society. We know all the situation. We know the development on ground. I don't think and I don't believe they will even get 100,000 naira as minimum wage. And even if they will get that, I don't think state governors may pay that. So even the federal government, I don't think they will reach up to 100,000. Hardly. This is my own projection. But maybe we will come later when it is now agreed, concluded, and signed into a law and discuss that based on this prediction or projection. Because look at it this way. The minimum wage is now 30,000 naira. And the government promised to pay what is called wage award of 35,000 naira. Put it together, we can now say the minimum wage is 65,000 naira. But in my own little analysis, the government is deliberately withholding the payment of the 35,000 naira wage award so that the labor will not have a high hope during negotiation. Because if the government is paying regularly, the labor will now think that we are now being paid a minimum wage of 65,000 naira already. So we should start thinking of from 70,000 naira upward. But the government is delaying the payment, always knowing that the government thinks it is always clever. It has those that has political ways to maneuver its own way. That by delaying it after every 3 months, we just pay for 1 month. When it comes to negotiation now, they will be able to cajole the labor union that, look, even the 65,000 naira together with wage award, we are unable to pay. Unless you want us to retrench workers, or you want us to sign what we will not be able to honor, we need to think very well. So the labor should actually be practical and negotiate what is reasonable. If I were labor, I will not even start this. If I were labor, I will just go with a proposal of just 150,000 naira, and I will stick to 100,000 naira honestly. And I will go to any length to ensure that that one is given, at least for now. Because the government is not existing for only civil servants that are not more than 5% of the entire total population of more than 200 million Nigerians. The government needs to provide other services, such as healthcare services delivery, quality education, infrastructure, and many other interventions. And there is not enough money for the government to do that. By now proposing a wage that is in fact, to even propose that it should be reviewed yearly is also impracticable. Please, let us be realistic, my dear respected labor. Let us do what we know can be possible. And at the same time, the government that is thinking to crash the price, I think that is the best thing that government now need to do. But crashing the price of essential goods or commodities does not mean that the workers should also be neglected. All the policies can go hand in hand. While crashing the prices for the whole society, you should also make sure that you are civil servant, that you don't want them to be corrupt. You provide adequately for them by giving them at least a living wage, as promised by President Tinubu during his presidential campaign flag off. But it's not only the labor, as I said, that is threatening to go on strike. The Academic Staff Union of Universities ASNA is also mobilizing toward that because of failed promises. And the ASU is even saying that it is not even about previous promises. It is about particular Tinubu's government promises. He promised 4 things for them, knowing it's so far implemented for almost a year. He promised them that he gave them a presidential pardon, and then they will receive 4 months withheld salaries. For more than 5 months now, nothing comes out of it. He promised them 35% wage review upward. For almost 7 months now, nothing comes out of it so far. He promised them 35,000 naira wage award. They are still earning more than 3 months now, nothing is coming out of it. He promised them that they will be removed instantly out of IPPIS, but the salaries they paid us this month is narrating for new IPPIS. We don't know the meaning of this. We don't know the difference between all wine in a new bottle. What is all IPPIS, what is new are all the same. So therefore, the government should not, that's why I said that the multiple crises government cannot afford to add more. Government should tame labor and ASU. Government should try all that it can to intervene and stop the strike by fulfilling some part of its obligations that are actual, that are realizable. Then government should look into masses and also intervene in areas that are practicable so that we avoid this crisis. And then we should start thinking of long-term measures that will make sure that we have long-lasting food security in case of future event, unforeseen circumstances that may already occur in the near future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Babayo. We're just going to take a quick break now. We want to spend another 10 minutes with you to discuss our second subject here on the program this morning, but all of that will be right after this break because we have a second guest who will be joining me live here at the Global TV studio. Do stay with us, everyone. Understand that Babayo Sule is still with us on the program. So we're just going to move to our second discussion real quick. Thank you, Dr. Sule, for staying with us on the program. All right, we understand that he has not rejoined now. So we're going to get him to rejoin once he does, and then we'll be back with you so we can talk some more with him. To stay with us. We'd like to say a big thank you to Dr. Babayo Sule for his patience in the course of this discussion this morning. But it turns out we're joined by another guest who is in our live studio this morning, a lawyer and the president of Yoruba Council Worldwide, talking about Oladotun Hassan. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio.
It's a pleasure to be in your program. Thank you very much.
Very well. So, Dr. Babayo, I'm just going to get you started with this, our second discussion this morning, and then Barrister Hassan will pick it up from there. So I was going to ask you, as it stands today, we understand that 60 members of the House of Representatives are now pushing a bill aimed at ensuring that in the final analysis, Nigeria moves away from this presidential system of government to a parliamentary system of government. In the middle of all that, the Senate, we understand, has set up a 37-man committee to work on constitutional review. We also are aware that they have a deadline of December 2024 to accomplish this task. Talk to us about these two salient issues.
Well, thank you very much. You know, Nigeria has experience of both. We practice a parliamentary system in the post-republic, and then we migrated to presidential system in the second, aborted third republic, and now the current fourth republic. To me, it is not about the system as per se, because both parliamentary and presidential systems have been permanent in some societies and have been successful instrumentally. For example, United States of America is considered the oldest presidential system for almost 200 years now, and it is successful, and see where America is today. Britain is considered as the most conservative parliamentary system, and it has been there for more than 200 years and is successful. So it is not the system of government so far itself that is instrumental in the success of governance, but rather sound leadership and quality representation. But sometimes political structure is paramount. In the case of Nigeria, for example, a presidential system to me is not suitable, and I am with the lawmakers, because a presidential system of government, although various societies or various countries have their own model of electing the president himself, it is not a unanimous process. It differs from one country to another, but a president is an executive one with an executive power, which is somehow a semi-authoritarian or dictatorial system according to some scholars. And I don't think Nigeria, the way it is, are looking at the fragile component of the country that we need to have an authoritarian president. That is what makes competition or scramble for presidency intensive and highly divisive in the country, because each ethnic group or religious group or region is scrambling to have it its own at the helm of affairs of the presidency, because he will now share favor and nepotism to his own kinsmen and kids because of the powers of the office of the executive president. So that is why, to me, a parliamentary system is better. But even the parliamentary system that we practiced during the First Republic is not the genuine parliamentary system that we intended to operate constitutionally. Because in the parliamentary system, a party that is able to secure the majority, at least 50% of the total seat, should now establish the government by electing now one of them to become the prime minister, who will now become the head of government. But in the case of Nigeria during the First Republic, none of these major parties of the MPC, AG, and NCNC, NEPU was able to get the required 50% to form the government. So it's either to go for another round of election or to go for a coalition. In this regard, the MPC and the NCNC decided to enter into a coalition government, whereby the MPC, I mean from the north, with the highest seat, ended up with the seat of the prime minister, who is the most powerful and the head of government, while the NCNC was given the ceremonial seat of the president, who is just like a ceremony, who is less powerful than the prime minister. So in essence, in practice, we operated semi-presidential system during the post-republic, not even parliamentary system. And now we are operating a presidential system. I am of the view that looking at Nigeria, looking at our population, looking at the geographical size, looking at our component element in terms of ethnic, religious, and regional groups, It is better we have a parliamentary system where we have a prime minister at the central government and a central legislature, the way it is now, that is the Senate and the House of Reps. And then in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, we need to have a premier and then a regional House of Assembly, or regional, regional House of Assembly, just the way we practiced during the First Republic. I think if we can restore back to that process, we can minimize excessive power at the center, we can divulge, or rather we can devolve more power to the regions, and we can also reduce or minimize this excessive and intense competition of power control at the center. And then the regions should be able to have their own more autonomy to pursue their own regional agenda. As it is now, for example, there are regions like the southwest and the southeast and even the south-south that are complaining that maybe some northern regions are dragging them backward from achieving their original development agenda. Like they want a state police, for example, some even they want to secede, and so many other things. Why can't we devolve more power to the regions so that any region that has a separate agenda for development should pursue it in such a way that it will now become a model for other regions also to emulate? In this way, I think we should be able to compete and then to develop at the same level using this. So I am with the lawmakers, but even at the same time, why can't we even sit down and think of our own indigenous model that may not necessarily be either presidential or parliamentary, but our own indigenous democratic model, just the way the US decided to put its own model after its struggle for independence from the Britain. We can do that. We have the scholars, we can come up with the model, we can come up with all the practice and the structures, we can open it for debate, we can pick the one that we feel is the best and in the best interest of the nation. I think the National Assembly should open up a room, not just limiting us to just parliamentary system. Just open up and call scholars to share their views on which system or structure do we think is best and we can refer to. I think this way we can make progress. We cannot continue with the encumbrances which have been imposed on us by colonialism and then think that that is the only alternative. It's not the only alternative. We have our own local alternatives. Thank you very much. Also, I appreciate, and I also once again, good morning to listeners out there.